of the push-pull gold stereo power amp. This was the companion amp to the Shawn Lane model, which had 8 EL34s. I built the first and last remake of that one a couple of months ago. In that video I went through all how the preamp works and everything, and the same preamp with both amps, so I'm not going to get into that on this video. You can, I'll link that other video if you want to learn about that stuff. But anyway, this amp is extremely powerful. The masters were only 3/4 of the way up there, and those two 412s I have, you know, like some of my favorite vintage speakers in there, and any higher than that I'd be afraid that those cabinets are going to just shatter, because this thing is like really powerful. This amp was my favorite in the 3 models that were available with this preamp. So it's obvious to say that because of that, over all the years since this, my new amps evolved from this. And sorry about the lap steel. You'll have to excuse my limited lap steel skills, but I'm recovering from shoulder surgery here. I can't play guitar. I can only do this for about 5 minutes too. So, but everybody's asked me for a video for this, so I had to play something. So there you go. But anyway, so you know what I really want to talk about here is what this guy who bought both these amps from me and commissioned me to build them, he didn't want that, because right now anyway, because anybody can get that. You can contact me. Sure, that's all refined from this and 30 years more of everything that it takes to make that, but you can get that. You can't get this. So I understand, you know, some people want things that nobody else can have, including themselves. But anyway, he managed to talk me into it. And you know, it must be impressive when this is all said and done and racked up over at his little studio. It's going to be really something special. But the hard thing for me was to say, okay, I never wanted it. People ask me a lot to do this, and I wouldn't do it for 2 reasons. One reason is, first of all, I have to remember what I did. You know, these were complicated, and I haven't done them in years and years, and that was difficult in itself. And the other thing is, I was afraid that if I did make one, I was going to want to make changes, you know, like that's what you do. And that, where does that end? I mean, where does it start and where does it stop? You'll wind up with that 30 years later. So what I had to say was, I had to have a definitive line. Let's say like the blue line in hockey, okay? That puck has to cross that line before that skate crosses that line, and that's it. It doesn't have to cross it by that much or this much. It just has to cross the line. So I wanted a line like that to make any changes in these where I only had to make the change right to that point. Because again, this is like recording a song you recorded 30 years ago. You're gonna say, oh, gee, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do that way now. Or there's certain things, but that's what they want. They want that song. So where I drew the line was, I said, okay, I'm only going to make a change if it's something that, like that blue line, I say that I absolutely couldn't let out of here without changing that. Okay, so the Shawn Lane model, not this one, the other one, you notice that transformer was standing about that tall. It's not like that on the originals. It's about as tall as this one. Okay, the originals, that transformer gets really hot. The people that made it for me swore to me up and down that that transformer can run that hot, blah blah blah, you know, and they were right, because you know, all these years later, I've never heard of one of them, and I know people that own those amps who run them all the time. You know, they put a fan on them and all that, but I can't let that out of there like that now. So I had the boys at Haybor redesign me one with enough stack so that thing runs about as cool as this model runs with this one. The other change in that amp was and in all the amps, mostly it's facilitated from the lack of good tubes now. Okay, so the other change that I made in both power amps was voltage. I used to run very high voltage in these amps. Can't do that now. Absolutely can't do that. I mean, I can't buy tubes now that even this guy's got thousands of dollars worth of original Mullers in here, and you know, if you call somebody like Greg Levy and ask him for 12 original Mullers that can handle, say, 600 volts at X current, whatever, he's going to laugh at you, because there's not much to pick from now. Where back in those days, I could get them for a song and a dance, and weed through them, and even at those voltages, you're going to wear them out really fast, and then you're going to need more. And so that had to change. There's no way that could stay that way. So I used my skills to keep the tone there by changing other things, like bringing the current up just across that blue line. You know what I'm saying? And so both of them have a different voltage. But the only thing you could see if you saw one of these 20 years from now, these remakes, and it winds up out on the open market, is you could only tell by the taller transformer that it's a remake in the other model, not this one. Preamp's a different story. I had to make a lot of changes in that, again, because of tubes. And the problem with that was, well, the good thing about that is that there's no change in the tone. There's no change in the circuit. Okay, the circuit is identical. But in the original, the chassis was the same length, depth, as this chassis. The tubes were inside the chassis. I can't let that out of here like that now. First of all, because of tubes. You got to take all this apart and then take the bottom cover off of this to get at the tubes. And I'll spend 8 hours rolling tubes in one of these before it's ready to go out. I used to do it back then, and I had to do it now on the two that I made. And those tubes aren't $20 a piece anymore. They're over $200 a piece now. There's 4 of them in there. So, and again, the source is getting thin. So if, say, you have 10 $200 tubes, to find ones that work just right in each position and are quiet and don't make noise and don't hum or don't do this or don't do anyway, that's tough to do. So you know, because they're just hard to get now. But back then I could big boxes of them, $20 a pop. I could sit there, roll through them, and again, it's proven out, because 20 years later, no one ever had to change them. Those tubes are still in those amps. Okay, but I can't guarantee that now with this guy. This guy, you're paying some good money for this guy. I can't have him pulling this apart every time a tube goes bad. So what I said was, I can't allow that out now. And for another reason, with all the internet education, people seem to think they know everything about everything now, and they can open up an amp, get on the computer, and then stick their hands in there, and there's lethal voltages in there. And I can't do that. I can't have tubes in there with all those parts where some guy's gonna have his hands in there thinking he knows what he's doing and get himself electrocuted. As my friend Ken Fisher used to say, "Zowie, Bob." But anyway, so what I did was, this chassis is 4 inches shorter than this one, okay? And the tubes stick out the back, so you can get at them. You can sit there and roll tubes as you like and test, and get them all. So you never have to take it apart to mess with them. You never have to put your hands in there. But that was a lot of work, because that meant redesigning the entire layout, new circuit board layout, and trying to make it sound the same with doing all that. So, but I went through it and did it for these two. So again, 20 years ago, if you see one of these, and it's got tubes sticking out the back, it's one of these two. But anyway, maybe this amp will be out of here soon, but maybe it'll hook up with somebody who can make a really killer video on the guitar. I can't right now, and I had to do something. So anyway, this is that amp, and this was a most people know what this is, a br9, and it's got a 50s P90, just like what you would have in a gold top.